All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our very last session of Explore Exercise. We've come a long way with a lot of good information, so hopefully, once again, you are benefiting from these sessions. Let's dive right into it. All right, so our topic today is we're going to talk a little bit about barriers and kind of identifying what barriers are versus excuses. And then we're going to talk more about injuries, how to, one, prevent injuries, and then also how to deal with injuries when we have them. So the first thing I want to get into is kind of talking a little bit more about barriers. And when I talk about barriers in my coaching, what I'm really talking about is basically those things that are preventing you from reaching your goals. They are essentially the reasons why you're not able to reach your goal. And we can talk a little bit about what they look like and what some examples are. But I do want to say one thing is don't always think of barriers as a negative thing. And I'll kind of get into what I mean by that. But oftentimes, you know, when you think about what's preventing you from reaching your goal is something that you kind of feel as a negative thing, and then that stress kind of builds up, and then it prevents you even more from reaching your goal. So when I talk about that, what I essentially am meaning to say is kind of reframing your thinking and kind of thinking about it in a different way can really help kind of move that barrier aside. And when you see the picture of the cone on the screen, you know, kind of going around those cones and not having them be an obstacle in your way. So some examples of barriers are, number one, don't have enough time to exercise. Finding exercise may be inconvenient or doesn't work into your lifestyle. You're lacking motivation or drive to get into a regular exercise program. Maybe you don't find the exercise enjoyable. Maybe it's boring. Maybe you have a low confidence in your ability to exercise. Some people may fear that they could get injured from exercise. You know, there's also just a lack of self-management skills, such as the ability to set a goal, monitor your progress, and then kind of, when you do achieve those goals, rewarding yourself. Also, the lack of encouragement, support from friends and family can be potential barriers. And then just accessibility to resources and places to work out, such as outdoor areas or a gym, that type of thing. So when I talk about barriers, I really want you to start thinking, and this will be part of the recap for the session, is to identify what your barriers are. So to list them out, anything that's potentially stopping you from reaching your goals without judgment, just list them out onto the paper. And then identifying what of those are barriers that are truly something that's preventing you, and then what are excuses, just some things that you kind of just say that may be preventing you. And I know that's kind of a tough thing to distinguish for some people, but I think that would really help you, once again, to kind of reframe what is preventing you. So this is kind of a good thought on the screen. It says, if you can find the reason for not wanting to exercise, you can find a solution. So if all the effort is put into all these reasons why you don't want to exercise, you don't want to get into a good routine, don't want to be consistent, why can't that effort be put into how can you make this work for you, your lifestyle, fitting it into your schedule, finding the time, finding the motivation, and those components. So what I would like you to do is listing out all of those barriers. Once again, everything that has potential to stand in your way, get it all out on paper, and then cross off everything that is an excuse, and then you're left with your barriers. And just really have that heart-to-heart with yourself about what is truly preventing you from starting or continuing on a committed routine. So once again, as I mentioned, barriers don't necessarily have to be negative. So when I think about a few of my potential barriers from when I would like to be on a regular workout program is my family, and mostly my my kids. My kids are younger, so they need a lot more attention and effort, and that's completely fine. That is the commitment I made. That's the choice I made. So dealing with that and working around it is where I have to be. So instead of having the excuse be my kids, what I do is work out before they wake up, work out before or after they go to sleep, work out with them hanging around. It's not as a dedicated workout session, but it's something. What I could do is work out with them. Sometimes they like to be involved with something, especially if it's moving their body, jumping jacks, those type of things. They love to do that kind of stuff, so I incorporate them into my routine. So I don't necessarily make it seem that they're the negative, but they're something I just have to work around. Remember that cone in that first picture? It's something I just have to know it's there, and I have to maneuver around it. All right, what else? So injuries. When you're moving your body, there is a potential for injury. And this doesn't have to be anything crazy as far as the risk goes up. It's all in being smart and using your head, and that is really the best way to prevent injury. So obviously accidents happen, even just walking down the street, there's potential for injury. So don't let that necessarily be stopping you from exercise. But I do have to say, once you get into a good routine, your body is going to be more suited to preventing injuries versus just altogether not exercising because of the fear that there's potential of injury, if that makes sense. So what I would recommend in any capacity, start slow, kind of get your legs underneath you, make sure you're confident in all the skills that you're doing. 9 times out of 10, there's a modification available for all exercises, and if you don't feel confident doing it, don't do it. Warm up and cool down for everything you do. I've said that many times throughout our sessions. I can't stress that enough, especially the warm up. Our muscles are cold, and they don't want to be moving until they're nice and primed. Just making sure you're warming them up, cooling down, stretching. And then as you feel more confident and you're ready to go, you can then increase for beyond that. All right. Next, recovering from an injury. If you do have an acute injury, maybe a little muscle strain or a muscle pull, or even if it's something that you've gone through a surgery, or something more on the serious end that you're working with a healthcare professional as your doctor. All I can say first is rest, rest, rest. Our bodies need that rest. We're not those young kids anymore where we bounce back the next day. So keep that in mind. If you do have a acute injury such as a muscle, pull or strain or something, after the injury, ice it first, and then after the first 24 hours, then apply heat. Once you feel good enough, start stretching that muscle and moving it. Although I say rest, I mean move it just gently to keep the blood flow going and the muscle moving to prevent stiffness. And then once again, after you work out, after a normal workout, your muscles should feel a little sore, but they shouldn't really hurt. If you're not able to kind of bounce back after a day or so after a pretty strenuous workout, then I would dial it back a little bit. All right, that's the end of our session for today. And this is the last of the 5 sessions. So for credit for today, As I mentioned before, list out all of your barriers, your potential barriers, and then cross off all the ones that are excuses. And hopefully that list will be narrowed down by quite a few, and maybe you'll even come up with just 1 or 2 barriers to work around and kind of reframe as being a different opportunity to work through those barriers so you can continue to move on towards reaching your overall wellness vision. So once again, for full credit, please submit your Explore exercise session recap that was sent in the initial email. If you can't get that paper back to me, just recap it into an email. That is fine as well. You can send that to my email address, which is on the screen, and please note the deadline to be November 30th of this year for full credit. Thanks again for participating. Hopefully you benefited from these sessions. If you need to reach out for any other reason, feel free to shoot me that email as well. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of your wellness year.